All right, we're there in Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse number 1. It says, dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savour. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honour. The title for the sermon is a stinking savour. Just like those dead flies, they cause a stinking savour. That's the title for the sermon this morning, a stinking savour. Now, we don't want our reputation, to be a stinking savour. If you have a look at that verse number 1 again, what is this stinking savour? The idea there is that some dead flies have come into some type of ointment. I don't know what this ointment is exactly. Maybe it's a perfume or something. But because the flies there rotting away, it's just kind of revolting. You don't want to use that ointment. Normally, ointment is something that's quite expensive. I recall I think it was the first or second time that I traveled to the Sunshine Coast on holidays. I took Christina out. Maybe I should name the restaurant in case, no, I don't know. I took Christina out to an Italian restaurant. It was near Kings Beach, okay? And we just felt like Italian. I usually, it was just the two of us, so it must have been with my parents. It was probably the first time we traveled. So we probably had the kids being taken care by my parents, and I took Christina out for a date. And, they were there eating a nice pasta. We were enjoying ourselves, having fun. And then we had to look at Christina's plate, and there was like a dead fly, but it's like a frozen dead fly. And we just called the waiter and said, look, we got a fly in the food. And they kind of didn't believe us. It's almost like they thought we put the fly in there or something like that, right? But, it kind of ruined it. Like Christina's appetite, she lost her appetite. It kind of just ruined the experience. And the fact that the restaurant didn't respond in a helpful way wasn't helpful as well. It just ruined the experience, ruined the food, it ruined the date, it kind of ruined the day. Okay, well, that's the same idea of these stinking flies. They just die in these ointments, and it just stinks up the place. Then it says, so doth a little folly, so just a little bit of foolishness that is in reputation for wisdom and honor. So if you're known as someone that is wise, someone that is honorable, you may take on a position like a pastor, or you may have another authority, a position maybe in your workplace, or maybe you're in government and you're a politician, and you're supposed to be someone that is honorable. Isn't that what they say about government officials? They'll call them the honorable so-and-so, surname, whatever it is, right? But if someone's got just a little folly, they've made a mistake in their life, it can just ruin the whole reputation. It takes so long to build a good reputation. In fact, keep your finger there and turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse number 1, because the idea of the ointment is found here in Ecclesiastes 7, verse number 1. It says, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. So it is a good name is better than precious ointments. That good name is speaking about a good reputation. That good reputation is better than any ointment you can have. Okay? Well, if you have a little folly, you get found out for some wickedness that you've done, you've disgraced yourself in your position, that can just ruin your whole testimony, and you become this stinking savor, as it were. We need to be careful about this because it takes a lifetime to achieve a good reputation, a good name. It takes many years in your workplace to work hard and to show yourself a faithful employee to build a good reputation. Just being stubborn, just being wicked, just acting foolishly can completely destroy that good reputation that you've built over the years. And so this is the teaching of this chapter, that we don't want to be a stinking savor. Most of the chapter is about being foolish, but that foolishness leads to a bad reputation. And look, we're all foolish to some extent. We all make mistakes to some extent, all right? We're all going to say things that we probably shouldn't have said. All right, but even though that's the case, we should try to minimize that or maybe rid that entirely from our character, improve, overcome the foolishness, increase in wisdom so we can build that reputation and not be that stinking savor in the eyes of other people. Well, let's keep going there. If we don't want to have this stinking savor, we don't want to have a ruined testimony. It says there in verse number 2, a wise man's heart is at his right hand and a fool's heart at his left. Now, it's kind of struggling to think about what that means, but then I kind of thought about it. I think it's straightforward. You see, most people are right-handed, aren't they? Who's left-handed here? Anybody left-handed? One. Uh-oh. No. All right, so from what I understand, about 10% of the population is left-handed. About 10%. I'm pretty sure Jonathan, my son John, he's not here today this morning, he's left-footed. I'm pretty sure he'd be left-handed, but because he saw everyone writing with the right hand, he started to learn how to write with the right hand. But everything else, his left. That's his strength. But look, the majority, when you talk about the general populace, the vast majority, our strength is on our right hand, and our left hand is weaker. Well, that's the same kind of idea. It says that a wise man's heart is at his right hand, meaning that when you have wisdom, it's going to give you that strength. But if you're foolish, it's like in your left hand, it makes you weaker. So that's the kind of concept. Now, of course, if you're left hand, you probably want your the wisdom to be on the left hand, kind of on the left side. Well, that's kind of what it's saying here, okay? And again, it's just saying that, destroying your reputation, if you're just seeking foolishness, you just decide, oh, I'm just foolish. That's just how I am. I'm just struggling. That's how, I'm just a foolish person. I can't change that. Well, you're just going to become a stinking savior to everybody else. You need to improve in wisdom. It's just going to make you weaker. It's going to make you less effective. It's just going to make you continue to stink. Instead of pulling those flies out of the ointment, you're just going to be adding more flies to that ointment and adding a further stink to your reputation. Let's keep going to verse number 3. It says, yea also, when he that is a fool walketh by the way, his wisdom faileth him, and he saith to everyone that he is a fool. Okay, so if you decide, I'm just going to be a fool. I don't desire to grow in wisdom. I don't desire to build my reputation. As you go about life, as you go about walking about, you're going to declare yourself to be a fool. Like just by your speech. Instead of your speech speaking wise things, instead of your speech bringing intelligence and things that are profitable to other people, as you open your big mouth thinking that you're wise, thinking that you're saying something intelligent, everyone's going to just turn around and say, man, he just proclaimed himself to be so foolish, And so this is, poor discernment. This is a lack of critical thinking, a repetition of lies. When you have this character about you, it just shows that you're a fool. But here's the thing, the fool doesn't recognize he's a fool. The fool thinks he's wise. The fool thinks he has a good reputation. But as he goes about life, as he walks by the way, he declares himself to people. He's not saying to everyone, hey guys, I'm foolish. But by his words, by trying to sound intelligent. Hey, his wisdom faileth him. He's trying to be wise. But everyone just says, man, what you just said is so foolish. And what has been one of my pet teachings in the last couple of years is the dangers of the internet. You don't want to be a parrot that just repeats some article, some video you saw online, regardless of where you got it from. Regardless if it comes from the mainstream media or it comes from the alternative media, don't be a parrot. Please don't just open your mouth talking foolishness that you've not done your own study. You've not done your own research. You've not applied critical thinking before you communicate that. That's my pet teaching for, I don't know, until I no longer hear foolishness. That's what I'm going to keep saying. Okay? Because the internet has made so many people foolish. You just repeat things. You just forward things without looking into it first. And I've given you some examples over the weeks and the months that I get forwarded, and I just, at some point I decide, it doesn't sound quite right. Let me look into this. And then I find out, it wasn't quite right. In fact, it only took me a few minutes to check it out to see if this is accurate, and it's not accurate. And it makes me sad, because I think, I don't want to think of my brother in the Lord or my sister in the Lord as a fool. I don't want to think that. I want to think of my brethren in the Lord as truth speakers, as people that love the truth, not people that love foolishness. I don't want to think about that about my brothers and sisters in the Lord. So it makes me sad when I hear people repeat things, but you don't know, Pastor Kevin. If you just knew. But I want to know, but tell me the truth. I want to know the truth. You come to church because you want to know the truth, right? The church is the pillar and the ground of the truth. So we come to church to hear God's word, to be taught and proclaimed, because we want the truth. This world bombards us with lies and foolishness. And that's okay. You're going to absorb some of those lies and foolishness. All right. So you need to have that filter in your life that filters out the foolishness. You do the research. You consider what is being said. Is this legitimate or not? And once you've ticked all the boxes, you've done your own research, this is true. I can prove this in many ways. Then you forward that information on. Then you speak of those things. Otherwise, you go around thinking that you're wise, but your wisdom is failing you and you're proclaiming yourself to be a fool. Please be careful, brethren. Okay, the internet has made us not more intelligent, or maybe some people more intelligent, but it's made a lot of people foolish. Okay? And, another thing that we can take out of this is, preaching is an honor. I find being behind this pulpit a great honor to be able to preach to you God's. I'm even surprised that we have this many people wanting to hear, I think, this crazy pastor preach. But here's the thing, I just think about how much honor it gives me and how serious it is. And, I want to make sure that when I preach something from God's word, that I've studied it well. Studies to show yourself approved, the Bible says. And, sometimes when I have someone that is new to preaching, sometimes the person that is new to preaching, they want to tackle really difficult or very deep doctrines. My advice to anyone that is new at preaching, if you want to get up here and preach, sometimes people say, well, what do you think I should preach? If you're kind of new at preaching, just preach the basic, easy to understand, easy to preach kind of things. Hey, just preach the importance of reading the Bible. Preach on the importance of going to church. Preach on the necessity of prayer, right? Hey, preach on even fasting. That's not too complicated, really, when it comes down to it. Preach about, the importance of just loving the Lord. And, hey, preach on the importance of going soul winning. I mean, these teachings, they never grow old. We need to hear these things time and time again. All right? But sometimes, the new preacher, oh man, I can't wait to get to the book of Revelation and preach on the end times. All right? It's like, well, you know what? Just leave that alone. I've been asked numerous times, Pastor, when are you going to preach through the book of Revelation, chapter by chapter? Now, I thought I could probably preach through that in my very first year as a pastor. But I'm glad I waited. You know what I set in my mind? I set in my mind, the first 5 years of being a pastor, I'm not even going to preach through chapter by chapter in Revelation. I'm going to give myself 5 years just to see if I can be a well enough rounded preacher, right? I was already suffering end times fatigue anyway when I started this church. But, I just said, I want to preach on everything else that I could possibly think about. And then once I've established myself, and people can turn around and say, Pastor, I think you're a wise man. Not that I'm boasting, but wise in God's word. Then I feel, okay, then I'm ready to preach on chapter by chapter for the book of Revelation. Okay, there's a reason why I've not touched that book in that way. Of course, I've preached on end times, but not in that kind of depth where we go verse by verse, chapter by chapter. Okay? And so that's my big recommendation. Someone wants to come up and preach, don't come and just bring the most complicated doctrine that you've got in your heart. Otherwise, you could start opening your mouth thinking that you're wise, but you'll show yourself to be foolish and potentially destroy your reputation. All right? I don't want people to burn out on their first sermon and go, man, I can't do this. I'd rather you start low, start simple, just preach a good solid sermon, and then as time progresses, as you mature, as you gain more experience, then you can level up and get deeper and deeper into meatier doctrines. Let's keep going there. Verse number 4. It says, if the spirit of the ruler, so any authority that you have, brethren, this is about your authorities, okay? If the spirit of the ruler rise up against thee, sometimes your boss is going to get mad at you. Sometimes on the job, your boss is going to say some nasty things towards you. All right? Now, Brother Caleb, I'm going to give you, an exemption from this one because your boss is just a complete jerk. Right? But look, most bosses, okay, they care about their employees to some level. They care about, the workplace to some level, okay? But you know what? Bosses sometimes will say nasty things about you. Sometimes I've had a pastor say nasty things about me that I think weren't warranted at all, okay? Sometimes authorities are just going to rise up, okay, against thee. It says here, leave not thy place. In other words, don't run away. Don't quit your job just because your boss said something nasty, okay? Don't quit church just because your pastor got upset with you about something, okay? Don't leave your place. Look, it says this, for yielding pacifieth great offenses. All right, for yielding pacifieth great offenses. What does it mean to yield? Yield means to submit or surrender. Here we've got our give way signs. Our give way signs. I believe in the United States, instead of give way, it says yield. But it's the same design. Is that right, sister? It's the same design. So if you just saw it, you'll know that means give way, even though it says yield. That's what it means, give way. What does it mean to give way? It means that you've got to watch for other traffic, and if there's other traffic They've got the priority. They've got the preference. You're going to submit yourself. You're going to stop your vehicle, making sure the rest of the traffic have the priority. You know, what this is teaching us is that when your boss or any kind of authority, kids, when your parents rise up against you, all right? When your parents get a little upset with you about something, you yield. You submit. You go, but they're not right about it. They're probably not always right because they're human beings. They're not perfect. Even then, you yield. You say, yes, boss, we'll do it your way. You know, one of the best lessons I've learned in life is, and again, I give you a lot of my workplace experience. There are times when my boss would decide to do something, and I just think, that's not right. I don't think we should do that. I think that's going to cause problems in our workplace. And so I'd go up to my boss, say, boss, look, can I just have a word with you? Yeah, sure. You know, this is what I think we should do this instead. But then I'd say this, but you're the boss at the end of the day. And like, you know, thank you for just letting me get that off my chest. I just wanted to share with you my concerns, you know, but you know, you're the boss, you do what you want. Sometimes they'll be like, you know, thank you for that. Yeah, you know what? I did not consider that. You're right. Let's not do it this way. Let's do it your way. I'm like, well, woo, that's awesome. And sometimes my boss will be like, you know what? No, Kevin, you're wrong. It's my way or the highway. You know what I mean? And we're doing it my way. And I'm like, all right, boss. You know, thank you for at least listening to what I had to say. All right? And if that's the way you want to do it, we'll do it that way. Okay? And sometimes, just to save my behind sometimes, I would then write an email to my boss just to have a documented record and say, hey, boss, thank you for catching up with me. You know, as I suggested this, but I'm more than happy to do it your way. Why would I write that email? Because I learned a long time ago that if it does fail, and it could potentially be my fault, I can at least turn around and say, look, here's the email. I did express my concerns, I did express my issues, but I wasn't in charge of that decision. It was someone else. I yielded to it. I just went ahead and did what the boss wanted. But one thing, you know, that happens, whether the boss is right or wrong, what happens is you obtain favor. People start to like you. People give you more opportunities to speak out, all right, and to do things your certain way. But you know, yielding does pacify great offenses. Your boss could just be mad at you. Hey, they might be mad at you. It could have been someone else that did the problem. Hey, it could be the boss himself that messed up. You know what? Sometimes it's just like, you're right, boss. We all messed up. Or you're right, boss. I messed up. Let's just fix this. Let's just do this the right way. You know what? And just having that submitted attitude goes a long way to making that your authority just calm down and move on. And again, in the long run, it'll play out in your favor. You know, that they'll appreciate you as that employee. Yeah, so, hey, when your boss gets mad at you, don't quit. And, you know, I want to talk to the young people here because, and I've told you many times, young people, your generation are quitters. They are. You know, they haven't got thick skin. Because, you know, they've not grown up with their parents that are disciplining kids. You know, they're not growing up with parents saying, no, child, that is wrong. You know, we live in this generation of, no, you just got to affirm your child in everything that they do. Even if they write a mathematical equation, 2 + 2 = 5. Well, son, that's your truth. You know, that's okay. You know, it's not wrong. It's just, that's your truth. Okay, but my truth, it's 4, but we're both right. You know, I love you, son. No, you're wrong. In fact, that's a stupid mistake because 2 + 2 is clearly 4. If you write 5, I'm really worried about your education here. You got to get this right. You know what? When the kids hear that from their parents, they're going to be able to get into the workforce and be, all right, I've got a little thick skin now. Right? I'm not going to get upset every time the boss gets angry at me. Hey, as long as he's paying me, I'm happy. Right? Whether he's happy or whether he's upset with me, as long as I get my paycheck, that's what I went to work for anyway. Right? So hey, this is good advice from Solomon. All right? And look, Solomon's the king. You know, I'm sure he has gone upset with his subjects, and he's advising his subjects, look, when I get mad, even if I'm wrong, just do what I've told you to do, please. It's going to be better for you in the long run, okay? Rather than just becoming rebellious and hot-tempered and storming out of the court or whatever it is, right? It's not going to end up well for you. All right, let's keep going there. Verse number 5. I'm going to read verse 5, 6, and 7 together. It says, there is an evil which I have seen under the sun as an error which proceedeth from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place. I have seen servants upon horses and princes walking as servants upon the earth. All right. I was kind of not really understanding what... In fact, I still don't exactly know what these verses are referring to exactly. I'll just share some thoughts. Number one, this could be saying that the great evil that Solomon has seen is when... so it's about a ruler. So when a ruler makes an error, in the sense that, let's say he promotes a foolish person, okay? Where you know, they instead of recognizing folly for what it is, instead of recognizing somebody with a bad reputation, they end up promoting that person instead of someone else. I mean, I'm sure you've been in places where you say, hey, this person got the position, but this person was much more qualified. I mean, this other person definitely should have been the chosen person, and you say, well, maybe that's the evil that referred to there. I don't think that's really what it's referring to exactly. I think what it's saying is that when a ruler makes an error, it affects a lot of people, okay? But then it continues in verse number 6 by saying this, that folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in a low place. So obviously the rich became rich because they're kind of wise with their money. And I think this is what it's teaching is that when someone is foolish, they like to lift themselves up in a high position. And that's the evil. Again, because they don't really recognize themselves to be a fool. But then you've got someone that maybe made riches by wisdom, but he's very humble about it. Right? Like he's not out there trying to show off and just try and look at me, look how amazing I am, But the foolish, no problem, they'll lift themselves up in their foolishness. Like they haven't got the humility, okay? And then it says there in verse number 7, I have seen servants upon horses and princes walking as servants upon the earth. Again, but a prince is someone in authority, a great power. Why is a prince walking upon the earth? Because, sometimes people of great authority and power, they just want to be a common man. They've got the humility about them. They don't need to be lifted up on horses. Okay, they don't need the great ceremonies. I'm watching great ceremonies of the new king being put into place. Some princes, they don't want that. They just rather just be humble, not recognizable. But again, you got foolish people, or the servants that are lower than the princes there, but they're happy to lift themselves up on horses. And I think that understanding that I've just shared with you, it fits the context a lot better of the whole chapter. Again, just speaking about the fact that this evil that Solomon has seen under the sun is that the fools like to elevate themselves. They like to promote themselves. And yeah, they can fool other foolish people into believing their lies. Okay, and the example that I think about, there's a name that's been on the news media for the last couple of years, is this lady in Sydney, she's passed away now, I believe, Melissa Caddick. Have you guys heard that name? Melissa Caddick. She was this financial advisor, and then she basically convinced mostly her family and friends to invest with her. And, she brought in about $20 million, family and friends money, promising them that, they're going to make these great returns, they're going to, this great investment. But all she was doing, she had a Ponzi scheme set up, and she was just living off their money. She was just spending all their wealth. She'd spend literally, $40,000 a day just on shopping sprees, on nice cars, on nice houses, and she wasn't investing their money at all. And one of her investors would come along and say, look, I need my money back out. So she'd give him the money back, but she would first find another victim to invest with her before she goes and pays off the people that are asking for her money. So this went on for many years, and this has been a big case down in Sydney. They've had to sell, apparently she disappeared, and then, maybe you know the story, they found like her foot or something, like a piece of her body washed up on shore at some point. Who knows what happened to her? Nobody knows, okay? But what do we find here? This Melissa Caddick was a complete fool. A complete fool. But she set herself up to be this great financial advisor. And she had these people come in, family and friends. You think you would not cheat your family and friends, surely. But they trusted her. They were fooled by her. But again, the foolish person, oh, look at me. Look how intelligent I am. Look how smart I am with investments. Come to me and I'll help you. But they all get burnt. They all get destroyed by that process. And so when I was thinking about these verses, my immediate thought was that Melissa Caddick, because she's been all over the news for the past year or so. Let's keep going there, verse number 8. And just by the way, brethren, say, how do I not get fooled by a fool? Listen, if you're going to ever invest with somebody, I'm not talking about even financially here, just even invest your time and your efforts with someone, you want to look for people that are humble, people that are lowly, people that have succeeded in life, they do well in life, but they're not just boasting about it. It's not all about them. It's not about how I get served, it's about how can I help others, how can I serve other people. That's, if you want to trust somebody, look for the people that are lowly, humble, right? The rich that sit in the low place. The princes that walk as servants upon the earth. These are the people that you ought to have some level of trust with. Not the fool that loves to elevate themselves, otherwise you might get burnt. Verse number 8. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it. That happened to Melissa Caddick. Okay? She literally dug a pit, as it were, Ponzi scheme, and she fell into it. And whoso breaketh an hedge, a serpent shall bite him. All right, so basically, it will all come crashing down on the foolish. By their foolish actions, it may seem like they're getting away with it for a while, but it's all eventually going to come down and destroy, not just, obviously destroy their reputation. That was the title for the sermon, again, a stinking savor. These people have become a stinking savor. They dig in that pit, but then they fall into it. All right? They're working on that hedge, but then the serpent comes and bites them. They reap what they sow. The Bible says in Galatians 6:7, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. All right? So if you act foolishly, you might get away with it for a while. Okay? And again, we're all foolish to some extent. But we need to try to get those stinking flies out of our life. We need to try to improve on wisdom, improve our reputation. But if you think just being foolish is the way to go, eventually you are going to completely destroy yourself. Completely destroy your reputation when nobody can even trust you. Nobody, even thinks of you in a high position, in a high way. Okay? It'll all eventually come crashing down. Verse number 9. Whoso removeth stones shall be hurt therewith, and he that cleaveth wood shall be endangered thereby. All right, verse number 9 is a little bit different. Like verse number 8, you can kind of see the foolishness there of digging a pit and then kind of fall into it, right? What you see in verse number 9, though, is just your common workplace kind of jobs. Like the person that removes stones is kind of like your bricklayer. Okay, he's moving a brick from one place to another, right, building a house or whatever. But it's saying that by doing that, you can hurt yourself. Like there are workplace accidents, right? I mean, if anything, a bricklayer might have just a workplace issues by just being out in the sun for a long time. Or just, hurting their backs, bending down, lifting up, picking up bricks, up and down, up and down. This happens to bricklayers. They damage their bodies. Hey, it pays well, but it damages their bodies in the long run. It says, he that cleaveth wood, someone that's just chopping wood, all right? Maybe that's what they do for the living, shall be endangered thereby. Because there can be workplace accidents there, right? I mean, when you're chopping wood, you're using an axe or something. If you don't swing it properly, you could hurt yourself. And so workplace accidents happen, all right? But what I believe verse number 9 is teaching us is that you don't have to be like this complete fool to destroy yourself. If you're working a job, all right, and you just have one moment of foolishness, you can have a major accident. All right? Just one moment of not paying attention to what you're doing can cause a major accident. I mean, I recall there was one time that I was driving that's actually the other way around, from Sydney to the Sunshine Coast. You know how I travel sometimes between ministries. This was driving a car with my whole family. And I just remember, I decided, instead of driving through the day, I just made a decision, I'm going to drive at night. I'm going to try to sleep as much in the day, drive at night, less traffic, maybe I'll get to the Sunshine Coast quicker. You know what that ended up being? A foolish decision. Because my body's used to, guess what? Sleeping at night. So I'm there driving at night. First couple of hours I'm okay, all right? And then just for a brief moment, I have one of those I think it was a micro sleep. It's probably like a 5-second sleep. Now, did I intend to fall asleep? Like, am I just being completely foolish by driving a car? Trying to serve two churches, all right? But what is it? It's a brief moment of foolishness, all right? Where my body's tired. I should have listened to my body. I should have just pulled over and go, you know what? I can't do this. I need to have a good sleep before we keep driving, all right? But instead, I'm just, and guess what? I'm on the other side of the road. I'm on the other side, and I see these other vehicles there, and then I wake up, and I'm like, whoa. I quickly get back on the other side. Nothing happened. No, nothing. But look, that could have been a major accident, couldn't it be? Now look, I don't think people generally think I'm a foolish person. But look, that was a moment of foolishness. And what it's saying is that even just a moment of foolishness can cause you to destroy yourself, hurt yourself in a serious way. Just a moment of foolishness can cause me to destroy my ministry as a pastor, right? There are certain qualifications that I need to meet to be a pastor. Now, look, I've never been into alcohol. I've never been a drunkard or anything like that. I'm not even interested. But let's say in the past I was, and I enjoyed a good beer here or there or whatever in the past, and then I've cleaned that part of my life up, became a pastor. It'd be very foolish of me, and it could just by accident, just sins of the past, where you're just walking down a bottle shop, and I just say, you know what, just can't wait to taste beer just one more time. Just a glass of wine, just for old time's sake. It'd be very easy, wouldn't it, if I had that attraction in the past. And I could just, nobody's watching. You know what, have that drink, and someone at church sees me, right? Just one moment of foolishness can completely destroy my ministry as a pastor, all right? So guys, keep that in mind, especially for those of you that work with tools, power tools and things like that. I know there's a lot of workplace restrictions and building codes that keep you safe, but even then, sometimes you hear of unfortunate workplace accidents that happen, and they've got everything lined up, they've got all the safety checks happening, and it still happens, Just someone did not pay attention at one moment in time. I was hearing a story about some electrician that electrocuted himself on a roof. Just one brief moment, they did not check that the power was out, and there he is, electrocuted himself, killed himself, working on the roof. So just, again, okay, we're talking about being completely foolish and destroying your reputation, but even that brief moment of foolishness can destroy you, can hurt you. So we want to work on this. We don't want to remain foolish, okay? We want to increase in wisdom. We don't want to destroy our reputation. We don't want to be a stinking saver. We want to build and work on our reputation. Verse number 10. If the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge. The word whet there, W-H-E-T, means to sharpen the edge. Then must he put to more strength, but wisdom is profitable to direct. So this is very obvious, okay? That if you want to be able to cut something more effectively, okay, you need the object to be sharper. Okay, the more blunt your object is, the more effort, the more work you've got to put to it. And so this is the saying that says, it's not always about working harder, it's about working smarter. It's about making sure you've got the right tools to do the job. And, just recently, since we moved back to the Sunshine Coast, Christina bought a new knife set, and those knives are super sharp. Okay, for a long time, she was just putting up with some really blunt knives. And while we were down in Sydney, it would take her longer to cook and to cut things up. And we were just wondering, should we buy something now? We were like, let's just wait till we get to the Sunshine Coast, then we'll buy some sharp knives. So anyway, for a long time, she's just using these blunt knives, right, just to do the cooking. And she got used to it. Obviously, it required a lot more work, a lot more labor to cut through things. And then she's got the brand new knife set. Guess what? Now she can cut things super fast, super effective. But because she's not used to it, she's had a lot of accidents on her hand. There was one time I came home and she's holding her finger. She's like, I cut myself. Not that she's normally does that. It's like she got used to the blunt one, and by using the blunt knife, she's got to put more effort in, and she's used to that level of effort. But of course, she got the sharper one now. It doesn't need that effort, and so she's got to be a lot more careful about that. All right, but yeah, it's not always about working harder. Though I do preach many times about working hard. But even better than working hard is working smarter. Finding more effective, more productive ways of doing things. You can get more done with less effort. One thing as well, before we left to the Sunshine Coast, because I was going to rent out the Sydney house once again, there's a lot of maintenance issues that I needed to fix. Thank God I've got a man down in the Sydney church that's kind of a handyman, well-rounded kind of man. And he came to my house one day. I showed him all the things I want to do. And he's got all the right tools. He works basically maintaining houses all the time. He came, had all the tools. I said, I need to do this. He's like, oh, yeah, easy. Takes out the tool. Done. So what else do you need? Oh, I need this done. Whatever. Done. What else do you need done? This. Done. Need some door stoppers here. Done. Bang. Done. Right? Oh, I've got tiles here. Easy. Bang. Done. I've got a hole in the wall here. Bang. Done. I'm like, wow. And I thought, you know what? What he's doing, I'm just watching him. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm not really that handy, okay? But just by watching him, I'm going, it's not even that difficult. But he's got the right tools. He's got that iron axe. But it's not blunt. It's sharp. He's got the right tools for the right occasion. I'm trying with these, these limited tools that I've got to do the job, and it's taken me a lot longer. I don't even know what I'm doing, all right? But again, just having the right tools, the handyman shows his experience. He's not working harder. I'm working harder, but I'm getting less done. He's working smarter, and he's getting a lot more done than I was. Verse number 11. Surely the serpent will bite without enchantment, and a babbler is no better. All right, so if you go around playing with snakes, guess what? They're going to bite you. All right, well, a babbler is no better. A babbler is someone that blah, blah, blah. That's what the blah, blah comes from, right? The blah, 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 blah. The person that talks a lot. All right, now it's not always just talking a lot, but the babbler is the babble. Meaning that what they're speaking doesn't make sense. Again, think about someone who thinks they're wise and they speak things without doing the research, without checking, right? What do they become? They become a babbler. It doesn't make sense. All right? They're not helping anybody. You're saying, sometimes people say about politicians, boy, he says a lot, but he didn't really say anything at all. Yeah, politicians learn to be babblers. They say things, but then you kind of say, you know what, they didn't even answer the question. But they just spoke for like 5 minutes. All right? They're professional babblers, many politicians. You know what, as Christians, we should not be that way. If you've got something to say, hey, say it, but say it with wisdom. Say it so it profits somebody else. Like if you're going to open your mouth, it better be because it's going to help somebody. Right? But the babbler, no. They love to talk, and you're like, you know what, I don't even know what you're talking about. It's not even helpful. I don't think you're even correct. I think you're lying. Right? I don't think what you're saying is truth. I've just wasted 5 minutes of my time. Say, well, it's only 5 minutes. Yeah, but then it's another 5 minutes, another 5 minutes, and we've just not gone anywhere. Or we're going around in circles. Well, we should not be babblers. Okay, but it's as harmful as a serpent's bite. Right? That's the kind of thought behind that. Let's keep going there. It compares the voice of the babbler or the foolish to the words of the wise man. Verse number 12. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious. Now, I want you to think about that as well. If you want to increase in wisdom, or you consider yourself to be wise, well, is your mouth full of grace? When you speak, are you a gracious speaker? What does it mean? Well, let's compare for a moment. It says, but the lips of a fool will swallow him up. Okay, so listen. Grace. This means basically to say kind or favorable things. When we speak about God's grace toward us, we say that's undeserved merit or undeserved favor. God's been kind toward us, sacrificing his son for our benefit, for our profit. Hey, that's very gracious. If you're a wise man, the words you're going to speak are going to be gracious toward other people, meaning you're going to encourage other people. You're going to say kind things about them. You're going to uplift their positive qualities. You're not just going to beat them down every time you have an opportunity. That's what a wise person does. A wise person is not looking to destroy other people. He's looking to profit other people, benefit other people. Okay? The wise man thinks of others with their speech. All right? If I know you've only got 5 minutes and I need to speak to you, I'll try to make my message within 5 minutes. The babbler, the foolish, says, look, I know you only got 5 minutes, but you need to hear me for an hour. I don't care what your time is. I've got to talk to you. Okay? But when you look at the comparison to the babbler or the fool, it says, but the lips of the fool will swallow up himself. So his words destroy himself. The wise looks to others to benefit others. The fool only looks for himself, but he ends up destroying himself. Okay? That's the opposite with wisdom. Verse number 13. And again, I really like verse number 12 a lot. The words of the wise man's mouth are gracious. Because some people think wisdom is just knowing a lot. I have a lot of information, and I can speak about a lot of information. That's not wisdom. Okay? The wise is gracious. You're helping other people. You're profiting other people. You love other people. You want to help other people. That's what true wisdom is. Is applying, yeah, great, you have knowledge. Okay? But sometimes the fool, they also obtain knowledge, and they speak that knowledge, but to no profit. Just to elevate themselves. No, the wise says, look, I've got knowledge, but hey, this knowledge is not going to help anybody, so I'm not going to talk about it. Hey, but this other wisdom that I have might help this person, so we'll speak about that matter. It's about thinking about other people. Okay, so, yeah, okay, you might be wise in your mind, but I want you to be wise with your mouth. Okay, be gracious when you speak to others. Verse number 13. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness. We're still talking about the foolish here. And then it says, and the end of his talk is mischievous madness. This is interesting. Okay, so this is why you want to overcome foolishness. This is why you don't want to be someone that continues and ends up destroying your reputation. You become a stinking savor. Okay, look, again, I've said this before. We're all a little bit foolish. We all say some foolish things. We need to fix that. Don't get comfortable in your foolishness. Because if you continue down that road, it's going to lead you to madness. What's madness? Insanity. Like instead of someone saying, hey, this person's just a little foolish, they're going to say, man, this person's insane. This person's not right in the head. This person's completely off. Okay, this person's beyond normal. Okay? And what does that mean? You're basically saying this person's destroyed their testimony. This person has a bad reputation. I don't even want to be close to this person because he's insane. He belongs in the insane asylum or something like that. Okay? What are you talking about, Pastor Kevin? Have you guys heard of Tyler Doka? Self-ordained pastor, okay? Tyler Doka. I met the man. I went to a preaching conference in 2018. I met this man. I thought he was a legitimate pastor. Turns out he was unqualified. Okay, turns out he ordained himself. He just called himself a pastor. Okay. Apparently he went to his church one day, went to his pastor and said, look, I'm leaving the church, this or that. And the pastor says, well, God bless you. Hope you, on your travels, on your journey, wherever you end up going, I hope, you're serving the Lord or something like that. And he goes like, I've been ordained. I've been blessed by the pastor. He said, the Lord be with you. And so I'm ordained, I'm the pastor. He sets himself as a pastor, right? Starts preaching seemingly correct things for a while. And then what's the first foolishness that he falls into? The flat earth doctrine. Flat earth beliefs. Okay? And at first you're like, well, who cares? I kind of had that thought. I don't really care. In the big picture, I don't really care. I don't think it's, that big of an issue. But here's the thing. By taking that view, well, who cares? Well, it's not such a big of an issue. A bit of foolishness. We've all got a bit of foolishness. But here's the thing. Someone like that, again, there's Tyler Doka, self-ordained, lifted up, right? He's riding the horses. He's lifting himself up. This evil that Solomon has seen upon the earth. Next thing that he starts to teach is that Christians, if you're not a good Christian, you're going to be tormented in hellfire for 1,000 years when Christ comes back. Instead of you ruling and reigning with Christ for those 1,000 years, he says if you've been performing badly as a Christian, you're going to be cast into hellfire, for 1,000 years, but then God will let you out at the end of those 1,000 years. It's like, man, this guy, at this point, this man's not even saved because this man doesn't even understand eternal life. This man does not understand everlasting life. Okay, so at this point you're like, okay, he's a fool, but this man's not even saved. I mean, this guy's probably a reprobate at this point, right? But where is he now? What does he teach now? I've only come across this the last couple of months. He now teaches that he's Jesus, that he's the second coming of Christ on this earth. It's true, 100%. I've shown some of the videos to the men. You guys know it, right? What's happened? He started foolishly, and now he's gone mad. He's insane. He's truly not a believer. Okay? And look, I can think of other examples like this, where foolishness, what's the teaching here? Foolishness left unchecked will lead to madness. You'll operate beyond normality. You'll think completely different to what general society thinks and believes. And look, again, society as a whole is quite wicked, okay? But there's still some level of normality, okay? Even in the unsaved world, there's still some level of normality, okay? But, you know, foolishness left unchecked will lead to madness. That's what Solomon's observed over the time. Now look, if someone's foolish, we should challenge that. Someone says something foolishly. Hey, in church, we say the church is the pillar and the ground of truth. If someone comes into church and starts teaching some foolish doctrine, we should not just be, all right, hey, openly teach that stuff. Hey, open up. Let's all hear what you have to say. We should challenge that, shouldn't we? We should say, hey, where is that in the Bible? Sometimes those people, just by their words, of course, show themselves to be a fool. But here's the thing I want you to take away from what we're, don't remove the context from what we're reading here. When you do challenge someone because they've said something foolish, remember the words of the wise man are what? Gracious. Challenge them graciously. Okay, lovingly. Don't just shoot someone down. All right, now look, of course, if a false prophet comes in here, they're trying to elevate themselves, they're trying to change our doctrines. Okay, I'm gonna call them out. I'm sure, even before I get a chance to call them out, I'm sure one of the men are gonna call them out. I'm pretty confident about that. Okay, and they'll be long gone out of here before they can do any harm. All right? I'm not talking about that individual. I'm just talking about a random person, maybe even a brother in the Lord, or just an unbeliever visitor that comes into church one day, speaks foolishly. Please don't just shoot them down and make them feel completely horrible. Okay? If you're wise, have grace. Be gracious toward them. Speak gracious words. Someone comes to church, you can lose your salvation. You're such an idiot. You know? Don't you know the Bible? Look. I can see, a lot of people actually believe that you can lose your salvation. Let me just show you in the Bible what it says about everlasting life. Let me show you these passages that say you can never lose it. Come along them lovingly. Why? Because you're trying to help them. You're trying to profit them. You're trying to save their soul because they've not understood the record that God gave of his Son, that he has given us eternal life. That man's not saved. So we want to be gracious toward people, right? Hey, we go door to the soul when it's such a great time to be gracious. People are going to say foolish things almost at every door. Almost at every door. You're going to hear some foolishness. But you've got to work on your graciousness. You've got to be gracious toward people. If you're going to get the opportunity to give them the gospel and see them saved, you've got to be gracious. Yeah, you're telling them about God's grace, but you want to have your words that are gracious toward them. Patient, loving, profitable toward them. Verse number 14. A fool also is full of words. Well, we know that already. Okay? A fool is full of words. A man cannot tell what shall be. Meaning that a fool just talks and a man says, I don't know, I can't make sense of what you're saying. Have you ever had that? Someone just is speaking to you and you have no idea. Where are we going with this? Or someone's asking you a question, you're like, I don't understand the question. Can you say it a different way? I don't get it. I don't get what you're asking. I don't get what your purpose is. I don't get it, right? So that's what it's saying. And then it says, a man cannot tell what shall be, and what shall be after him. Who can tell him? What this is saying is that you might have someone speaking foolishly babbling toward you. You're trying to make sense of it. You're kind of trying to ask questions to clarify. But then it's kind of like, who can tell him? You can't communicate to a foolish person that they're speaking foolishly. You can't correct them. They refuse, or they get irritated. Like they might say something and you ask questions. Look, I haven't fully understood what you said. Can you just clarify these things? I can't get it. They'll get irritated at you. They'll get frustrated at you. Instead of going, all right, let me just say that some other way. I realize I probably didn't explain it all that well. Let me say it this way. They'll get frustrated. You don't get what I'm saying. You don't understand. That's a foolish person. You can't help them. They don't want to receive correction. They don't want to, they take offense that you can't understand them. But they're the babbler. They're the ones speaking foolishly. But they get upset at you because you've not understood their foolishness. That's how life is, though. That's the reality of life. Okay? These are things that... and look, if you're explaining something to someone and they don't get what you're saying, just say it a different way. Be patient with people. Maybe you're speaking foolishly. Have you ever gone to someone and you just started speaking to them and like they don't know anything about what you're saying. Like something's fresh on your mind. Something's on your mind and you're like, blah, 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 blah. But they don't know what was just fresh on your mind. It just came out of your mouth. I remember having an employee like this. It's like the person will have half a conversation with me. It's like the first half of the conversation, she had it in her head. And I'm getting the second half of the conversation. And I'm like, but what are you talking about? Like, what is that about though? And she got frustrated at me. And I go, and I had to sit her down one day because this kept happening. I said, look, I think you're having half the conversations in your head. You need to give me the whole conversation. Give me the whole question. Give me the whole comment so then I can respond adequately. And she's like, you know what, you're right. That's what I do. I start thinking about things and then it just starts coming out of my mouth. And I thought that what I thought about already came out of my mouth. Right? But again, what was that? That's being gracious with that person. Okay, pulling them aside and say, look, I don't really get, what you're saying. Instead of you getting frustrated at me, we want to work together. We want to help each other. You need to work on your communication. Let's keep going there. Verse number 15. The labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them, because he knoweth not how to go to the city. I thought this was the funniest verse in this chapter. Maybe the funniest verse in the whole book. It says, the labor of foolish, a foolish man does not want to gain wisdom. The foolish man does not want to improve on their skills. They don't want to get better on the job. They don't pay attention, okay, to the point where they can't even go to the city. Let's say you're working with somebody, all right, and say, look, we've got a job in the city. We've got to go to Brisbane. We're on the Sunshine Coast. Listen, our next job, it's a good paying job. It's worth going down to Brisbane for this one. Like, you got to go, we'll meet down in Brisbane at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right? And like, that's just a simple instruction. And they turn around, like, oh, you want me to go to the city? Like, how do I get there? Like, well, just drive. I don't feel comfortable driving to the city. I've never been there before. How do I get there? Well, if you can't drive, just catch some public transport. And foolish man, okay. Comes back, I don't know, do you think I should go by train or by bus? It's like, well, it doesn't really matter. As long as you get there by 10 a.m., we've got a job to do. Just figure it out. They come back to you. Oh, I think maybe the bus, because, the travel is shorter, And then, okay, all right, cool, whatever, catch a bus then. Like, now you're starting to get weary, right? You're like, boy, this is such a simple instruction. Just go to the city. I'll meet you there. Just whatever way. It doesn't matter. Okay, the company will pay for your travel expenses. Just get to the city. Let's get the job done. I'll meet you there. Okay, but the foolish, what? They cause weariness to the person they're working with. All right? They need constant approval. They need constant instruction. They never pay attention. They never improve. They don't do their own research and their own study to better themselves. Now look, when you start a job, a brand new job, you're going to be foolish. You're new. Everyone knows you don't know the job. Everyone knows you're not full of wisdom here. You're not going to turn the company upside down on day number one. You need a little bit more hands-on teaching. Maybe every day for a couple of weeks, someone needs to train you. That's understandable. But at some point, you need to be a fully fledged, hard-working person. who can just apply themselves in whatever needs to be done. I've experienced these things. I've told you before. I tell my supervisor under me, listen, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe 2 hours later, they come into my office. Oh, how do I do that? Well, the reason I made you a supervisor is so you can work these things out. Like I observed you to be one of the better candidates for this position. I'm asking you to do it, so just get it done. It kind of surprised me. I taught an initiative, the lack of initiative. I mean, go to YouTube, just type it in. Like most things in life now, you just go to YouTube, type it in, and you got a whole video of how to do certain things. You know? But the foolish, he's weary, he's tired, he's tiring to people. And he doesn't make it to the city at the end of it. You're there at 10 a.m. and the guy's still not there at 10 a.m. And you find out, oh yeah, I figured out that the bus wasn't the best way to go, so I wasn't sure how to do it. Weariness. Don't be that person. Children, don't be that child that needs constant, reminding. Now, I've used guys this analogy before. When I'm printing out my sermon notes, I say to my kids, can you check that the printer's on? They're good now because I've preached about it, so I don't think they want to be embarrassed anymore about this, okay? But before it's like, yeah, Dad, the printer's on. So I print, nothing prints. What's the problem? No paper. That's what I meant. When it's on, can you check if the printer's on? Because I actually want to print something. I don't want to just see a light on the printer. I don't want to just, it's plugged into the power. That's not the intention of my question. The intention of my question was because I wanted to print something. I wanted to print my sermon notes. My kids get this now. The printer's always full of paper. Okay? But the fool would just be the minimum and not recognize truly what is the reason why I'm asked to do certain things. What's the end goal? What's the purpose? Don't be that way. All right? Gain the wisdom. Verse number 16. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child and thy princes eat in the morning. I'll be real quick about this. But obviously, woe to the land if your king is a child. And we've seen sometimes in the generations of Israel that their kings were literally children. And this happens, I guess, if a monarch dies early and the only one that succeeds them is a little child. They get thrust into these positions of authority. How is a child going to rule over an entire nation? It's not going to happen exactly. So woe to that city. Woe to that land. Okay? At least, whatever you think about the British monarch, at least the new king that we've got, he's at least 73 years old. All right? I mean, thankfully, we did not get like an 8-year-old child on the throne there. Okay? All right? I mean, whatever you think about it, at least it's a 73-year-old man. He's going to obviously have greater wisdom of how to be the head of state. They don't get involved in politics anyway, or so as far as I understand. Okay? But, of course, that is better than a little child because a little child lacks wisdom, a little child lacks experience. And he keeps going there, verse number 16, and thy princes eat in the morning. Go, what's wrong with eating in the morning? Well, it's just saying this. We'll look at verse number 17 because it kind of compares it. Is that the little child only cares about themselves. They only care about making sure they're fed, they're nourished. Right? The little child will go and eat his lot. He wants to go eat his sweets and his ice cream and his, whatever, just to satisfy his desires, his burning lusts. That is not the mentality of an experienced older person. Because it says there in verse number 17, blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for strength and not for drunkenness. So it's better when you have a king that actually knows when to eat, when it's in due season. He knows when he can take care of himself. He's not after lust. He's seeking his own lust and desires. In due season, he'll take care of his own needs, but he makes sure that it's only possible once the land has flourished under his reign. But again, even more great in profit of that is when the king is the son of the nobles, so that he's had a good upbringing. Okay? He's gone from a child to an adult. He's had that upbringing. He's been raised by, noble people of good standards, people of good morals. Verse number 18. By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands the house droppeth through. So this is obvious. every house that you live in is going to fall apart. It needs maintenance, it needs repairs. But if you're lazy, if you're slothful, if you're foolish, you're going to just watch it decay. You're going to be idle, you're going to be lazy, you're not going to do anything to fix it. It's going to fall apart. Okay? And again, if you have a house and it just completely falls apart, it just shows you to be foolish. It ruins your reputation. You go, how can this man not even have just lifted up his hand to do some maintenance work, or at least gone to work and paid another man to do the maintenance work? But see, the slothful, the lazy, they don't want to do anything. They just let everything fall apart. They destroy their testimony, their reputation. But here's the thing that you need to take out of this, brethren, is that when the Bible speaks of the house, it's not just speaking about a physical building many times in the Bible. When it comes to the local church, it's known as the house of God. Amen? If I'm a lazy, slothful pastor, this church is just going to fall apart. Okay? But what else is known as a house in the Bible? Your family. Many times the Bible speaks about your house being your family. Okay? You can be a hard-working man on the job, but you can be a lazy father. You can be a lazy, slothful husband. And you can be the same. And just go, you know what? I don't care about my marriage. I know there are problems. My kids, I know there are problems. I don't care. I'm lazy. I'm not going to do anything to fix it. You know what's going to happen? Your house is going to collapse. Your family's going to collapse. Your marriages are going to break apart. Your children are going to rebel. Okay? That's the slothful way. That's the foolish way. You want to destroy your reputation, let your family fall apart. That'll destroy your reputation. I take no joy in saying that. I love family. I love my family. I love my wife. I love my children. And so I love every family in this church. I love every marriage. I love every relationship between parents and children because I highly value mine, and I truly believe every family is so special, so important, especially in a society that's trying to destroy what a family is. It's the very first thing that God gave Adam is his wife. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Family is important to God. But men, I know, maybe you're hard-working. Maybe you fix things around the house. I'm not slothful. But how's your family, though? Are you being slothful with the house that's more important than the bricks and mortar that you live in? Verse number 19. I'll get through these last verses quickly. A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. All right, so basically it's saying that, the saying that money cannot buy you happiness? Well, this is basically saying the opposite. That money can buy you happiness. Okay, so what in the world? Again, okay, so having a feast, having a party makes you happy. All right, wine, again, this is juice, makes you merry. Remember, juice in the Bible time was hard to come by. Okay, it was, expensive. All right, a lot of effort came to making juice. Okay, this makes merry. You can enjoy these things. But money answereth all things, meaning that money gives you all those things. Okay, this is in comparison to the slothful man that we just read about, that is lazy and does nothing with their life. They're going to end up miserable, unhappy, okay, and destructive. But you want to have a good life? You want to be able to enjoy and have a nice party, enjoy and buy nice things? Well, you need money for that. So how do I get money? By not being slothful, by going to work, by laboring, by increasing in wisdom. Okay, money does not make you happy. But money in the hands of a wise man, a hard-working man, does make you happy. You can apply it to things that you can rejoice in and that you can rejoice with others. Hey, we're having a feast after the second service at my place. I hope it can be a time of happiness, of joy. So how'd you afford that stuff? Money. How'd you make that money? I'm working. Okay? I work as a pastor now. Full-time position as a pastor. Laboring. Okay? So, this idea that money does not buy you happiness, if that's what you're chasing only in life, of course it's not going to buy you happiness. Okay? But with wisdom, with good application, with the thoughts of how can I bless people, it does bring joy. Okay? But you can't have this joy in life if you're lazy and sluggard, refuse to labor, refuse to work. You're just going to be miserable and destructive. Verse number 20. You say, this is common sense, Pastor. It should be common sense. But it's in the Bible because for a lot of people, it's not common sense. You understand? When things are in the Bible, it's because God knows, even as Christians, we forget these things. We lose common sense, even as Christians. And so God has to tell us things that seem so basic, so logical. Remind us these things, right? Because we can often forget. Last verse number 20. It says, curse not the king, no, not in thy thoughts. So again, people in authority, okay? And curse not the rich in thy bedchamber, for a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which have wings shall tell the matter. This is what the saying comes from, a little birdie told me. How'd you know about that? Oh, a little birdie told me. Be careful about the things that you speak about. You know, it returns back to that thought, that if a ruler rises up against you, just yield. You don't have to always voice your frustration at your authority figures. If you're in the workplace, you know what, your boss upsets you, don't have to go to your coworker and say, can you believe what my boss said about me? Because you know what, somehow that information's going to reach the ears of your employer. Somehow that information is going to reach the ears of your boss. You think they're going to be happy with you when they hear that coming out of your mouth? Again, it's going to just destroy you. It's going to hurt your reputation. Okay, it's going to be a stinking savor or a stinking smell, in the nostrils of your authority figure. So just be careful about what you say. You don't have to voice your opinion about everything. If you don't like somebody, you don't have to just go and tell everybody that you don't like them. Just keep that to yourself. Because you don't want a little birdie going out there and saying everything that you've said under the sun. Okay, because you'll end up offending a lot of people. You'll end up destroying that reputation. All right, brethren, that's the Ecclesiastes chapter 10. A stinking savor. Brethren, please be careful not to destroy your testimony. How do I not destroy my testimony? Increase in wisdom. And not just in information in your mind, but how it comes out of your mouth. Be gracious with your words. Okay? And when you identify foolishness in your hearts, you need to get rid of it. Don't just continue in that foolishness, or it will drive you to madness. Let's pray.